Okay, one of our viewers posted this article in our Discord server, and I would like to thank Amanda for posting it. And it's an article by Dean Blundell, the same person I was talking about when the US government was asking Google for Canadian details. When that story came out, Dean Blundell wrote an article basically saying, "Here I am, come find me." But he also wrote this article and it's titled, "Canada's Quiet Boycott is Crippling American Industries." But he's got a few data points in here when it comes to the cross-border travel that I actually think everybody should see. And he also talks about the wine and spirits industry, and how everything we're doing right now is to protect Canada. So we're going to go over this article in this video. And just FYI before I start, I don't think you're going to hear from the co-host today. She's pretty much out cold. But if she does decide to wake up, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to find out. Alright, let's get started on the article by Dean Blundell. Just FYI before I start, I'm going to read out the article for those who are just listening in or on their way to work, or for the visually impaired as well. So let's get started. Here's the number that should make everyone in Washington sweat. 63%. That's how much American liquor exports to Canada cratered in 2025. According to the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, the U.S. industry's own lobby group, not some vengeful Canadian think tank. They're the ones putting the figure in print, and they're doing it because their members are bleeding. Now, we know the U.S. liquor industry is suffering right now because I just did a video on Chris Swanger, and he did an interview with CBC, which I'm actually impressed with the CBC interviewer. He asked him some tough questions. But the answers that we got from Chris out of that interview was the same BS that we got 14 months ago. We're a distinct industry, we're neutral, we think it's unfair for us, we should get exempt, blah blah blah. But one thing that he never mentions in the entire interview at all is the fact that Kentucky is an overwhelmingly red state, and many of his distillery members obviously voted for Diaper Dawn, and they're still not taking responsibility. So yeah, thoughts and prayers to your industry. Back to the article. Bourbon distilleries in Kentucky, rye producers in the Midwest, California winemakers who built a whole export program around the Canadian market, gone. Cleared off the shelves of provincial liquor stores across the country in the span of a few weeks back in early 2025, when Diaper Dawn blanketed the 25% tariff on Canadian goods, went live, and Canadian premiers, across party lines, across regions, answered with the most uniquely Canadian retaliation possible. They pulled the booze. The next section is titled, "The Provinces Did It, Caveat, and Why It Matters." Before anyone in the US trade press tries to spin it as some kind of unfair federal action by Ottawa, a constitutional reality check. The federal government in Canada doesn't decide what's on the shelves at the local liquor store. The provinces do. Alcohol distribution and retail is a provincial jurisdiction, always has been. The LCBO is owned by Ontario. The SAQ is owned by Quebec. The BC Liquor is run by British Columbia. Manitoba Liquor and Lottery is run by the province of Manitoba. So when Premiers Doug Ford, Francois Legault, David Eby, and Wab Kinew started yanking the American products the same week that the tariffs hit, they were exercising powers that were entirely and indisputably theirs. Ontario alone pulled more than 3,600 products from the LCBO catalog in 35 US states. Quebec halted sales and imports. BC initially targeted red states, which I thought was a stupid idea, then expanded the ban, which I thought was a good idea. Atlantic provinces began selling off remaining inventory and donating proceeds to charity. Manitoba did the same. You know, it seems like such a long time ago that this actually happened. I mean, what, maybe 14, maybe 13 months ago? But when it did happen, it was like dominoes falling. I can't remember the first province that announced that they were pulling it. It might have been Ontario. But I was more surprised on how quickly all the rest of the provinces and territories followed in the footsteps. I mean, even Alberta and Saskatchewan at the time. Back to the article. And this is the part the US Trade Representative seemed to determine to ignore in his angry reports demanding the booze be returned, immediately and permanently. Yes, go screw yourself. These are the largest provinces in the country, Ontario and Quebec alone, home to more than 60% of Canadians. They are also the provinces whose manufacturing economies, auto, aluminum, steel, aerospace, lumber, have been hit the hardest by Diaper Dawn's tariff regime. I bet we'll never hear Chris Swanger talk about this. All he cares about is his US booze, not about what's happening to our country. The Windsor-Detroit Auto Corridor, the Sault Ste. Marie steel mills, the Quebec aluminum smelters, these places where the tariff's pain is most concentrated are exactly the jurisdictions doing the retaliating. This isn't a coincidence. That's democratic accountability. Voters in those provinces are watching their factories struggle, and their elected premiers are responding with the tools at their disposal. Yeah, looking at you, Alberta and Saskatchewan government. Pulling Jack Daniels off the shelves at the LCBO is one of those tools. It is, in every sense of the phrase, fair play. And this is what I've been trying to explain on my channel that most US officials don't understand. We're in a sense retaliating. We're not causing your problems. Chris Swanger doesn't get it. Nutlick doesn't get it either. He called us insulting. And neither does Hoekstra, who claims that we're not being nice to them. These are 3 examples of US citizens who reflect a good portion of their population. Not all of them, but a hefty one. And this is why these guys are on my biggest shit list right now. Well, this guy as well, mainly because he called us goofy accented people. But getting back to the article, because I don't want to talk about those guys anymore. The next section is titled, The bigger picture, it isn't just the booze. The 63% collapse in liquor export is the headline, but it's a symptom of something much larger and much harder to walk back. Canadians as individuals, not as a government, not coordinated by Ottawa, not pushed by any premier, have simply stopped going to the United States, and the data is staggering. Statistics Canada reported that Canadian automobile trips to the US fell 30.9% in 2025 compared to 2024. That's roughly 7.6 million fewer vehicles crossing, year over year in a single year. That kind of decline you don't see outside pandemics and terrorist attacks. By RBC Economics account, 29.1 million Canadian residents returned from the US in 2025, down 25.4% in 2024, and the contraction continued in early 2026 with no sign of reversing. In fact, it's picking up. Now, this is where I was wrong about the prediction for 2026, because I did think it would bottom out. But these numbers that Dean's going to show you, and that I'm going to read out, are actually very surprising and encouraging as well. Air travel followed the same trajectory. Same-day automobile returns from the US fell more than 40% in some months. Overnight trips dropped 37%. No, 34%. By province, the breakdown is brutal. Quebec same-day returns down 52.5% in May, BC down 52.3%, Ontario down 33.7%. The three biggest provinces, again, leading the way. Now, I knew BC broke the 50% mark in March, and that was the first I heard any province breaking the 50% mark. But to hear that Quebec is now down 52.5%, well done. Now let's hear how the border states are handling this. And the pain is exactly where you expect it to land, on the American side on the border. Maine had nearly 750,000 fewer Canadian land crossings through November 2025. Passenger vehicles down about 25%. Vermont down more than 28%. New Hampshire, Canadian visits down roughly 30% over the summer. Washington State down more than 24%. Idaho down more than 27%. Niagara Falls, New York, crossing at the Rainbow Bridge alone down nearly 29% in May. These aren't abstract figures. They're empty motel parking lots in border towns. They're pizza shops in Niagara Falls reporting collapses in walk-in business. They're duty-free operators, the family-run shops that line the border from Atlantic Canada to BC, telling reporters that sales are down 80% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Pandemic-level stuff, one of them said. The Frontier Duty-Free Association called it catastrophic. Now, I've covered empty motels along the border, the pizza shops, and even the duty-free shops. I'm actually wondering if Dean follows my channel or not. But anyways, the duty-free shops. We already know that a few of them have closed down, and others are on life support right now. But when your business model counts on people crossing the border, well, you're in a bit of trouble right now, and I don't have a solution for this. Back to the article. Visit Buffalo Niagara is putting up Buffalo Loves Canada billboards and buying ads on Expedia, trying to win Canadians back. Whole tourism marketing budgets in border states have been redirected to a single objective: please come back. The state of Maine has flagged Canadian withdrawal as a tourism crisis. Senator Chuck Schumer has been releasing CBP data, trying to draw attention to the bleeding. It isn't working, because Canadians are voting with their wallets, and the vote is not subtle. Now, when it comes to the Buffalo billboards, the Buffalo Loves Canada, that was last year's model. This year's model is Oh Canada, or something like that. Now, I understand and appreciate that Buffalo did something very good for Canada when the mic went out and they sang our anthem. We appreciate it. But this is just me, but it feels like the tourism officials are trying to milk this as much as they can and cash in on the opportunity. And like I said, this is just my opinion, but it's very bad timing right after just to put another billboard up. Because the minds of Canadians are not going to change just because you sung our anthem and you put a billboard up. We know your businesses are hurting, but you still got a border problem and you still got a people problem as well. Now I'm going to have to fast forward a little bit because I'm starting to run out of time. The last section of this article is titled, "The Math the US is Going to Have to Face." So here's the running tally. American distillers lost roughly 2/3 of their Canadian export market, a market they spent decades building. American border state economies are absorbing what's been described in congressional reporting as a massive sustained blow. American duty-free, hospitality, retail, and tourism operators in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, Washington, Idaho, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Dakota, and Montana are watching the Canadian customer base they planned around evaporate. And every single piece of this is a legitimate, lawful, democratic response to policies that the United States chose to impose first. The provinces didn't break any agreements. They exercised constitutional authority that has always belonged to them. The individual Canadians stayed home, didn't violate anything. They exercised the most fundamental consumer right there is, the right not to spend their money somewhere. There's nothing for the USTR to litigate. Nothing for Diaper Don to executive order his way out of. No lever in Washington that can force a Canadian family to book that Cape Cod weekend again. Now, we have to realize that there's going to be a lot of tactics that the United States is going to try to get us back. And the biggest one? Guilt tripping. basically guilt-tripping us into thinking that we're hurting our friends in the United States, or guilt-tripping us that we're the ones causing these businesses to close down. I mean, hell, we've even heard things where they say, like, oh, we shouldn't resist our feelings and just admit that we love going to the United States. I'm paraphrasing. That came from the clip from Oregon where they said that we shouldn't resist our feelings and admit that we love Oregon. Like, fuck that. So these tactics are going to continue in 2026 and beyond. And as Dean said, there's absolutely nothing the US government or these US businesses can do anything about it, because it is our money, and it's our money that they want. Last screenshot for this article. The US picked this fight. The pain was supposed to flow north. Instead, it's flowing in both directions. And in some sectors, like spirits and border state tourism, it's flowing harder south than it ever did north. That's not vindictive. That's not unfair. That's a country of 40 million people and 10 provinces, governments, doing exactly what sovereign trading partners are entitled to do when someone tries to bully them. Just FYI, Dean, you forgot the territories as well. It's fair play, all of it, and it's working. We're not doing this to America, we're doing it for America. But most importantly, we're doing it to protect Canada. And if you're here reading this, you already know that. Now, I highly recommend that everybody subscribe to Dean Blundell's Substack. And I'm not saying this just to get people to sign up to his Substack. I mean, I've never even spoke to Dean, and I don't get anything from forwarding my audience over to him. But with current media these days, I mean, even our Canadian media, sometimes you want to hear things that, well, how do I say it, relate to you on a personal level. I mean, even our Canadian media still has an agenda to it, or they don't understand from a citizen's point of view. Which is why it's refreshing to read an article from Dean, because I can relate to everything that I just read out to you. Which also gives me reassurance that other content creators, whether video or articles, we're aligned in terms of what we feel when it comes to our next door neighbor. So I would highly recommend that everybody check out Dean Blundell's Substack. And who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to talk to him. And maybe get him on my channel or something. Hey, stop it. Sorry about that. Co-host is still sleeping, but when she stretches, she's pressing the buttons on my keyboard. Shit, what was I trying to say? Oh yeah, the biggest takeaway I feel from this article is that every Canadian, and even former international tourists to the United States, we need to realize that we still have the power, and we hold all the cards. To close off this video, I would like to thank again Adrian for posting this on the Guard Leaf Hay Cafe page, and it's another photo from the Yukon, this time from the Kluane National Park. Normally there's not that many photos that are submitted from the territories, so anytime I get a chance, I'll be happy to feature them on my channel. So thank you again, Adrian. Alright, that's all I got for this video. And unfortunately, the co-host did not wake up, so you'll have to wait for the next one. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international perspective without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you'll be notified of my future videos. And if you want to see more of my videos, check out the ones that are going to show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone. I'll catch you in the next one.